Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting signed decimals. We're just going to combine what we know about adding and subtracting regular decimals, just positive decimals, with our integer rules. So a little review: to add and subtract decimals, you must line up the decimal points. So that's very, very important when we're working with decimals and adding and subtracting them, because if we do not do that step, we will not get the correct answer. So we need to be pay close attention to our place value and use zeros as placeholders when necessary. The next step would be to follow the rules for integers after we've lined them up. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these problems. So number one, we have 5 and 67 hundredths plus negative 35 hundredths. So I'm going to do exactly what I just talked about. I'm going to line up my decimal points. So I am adding these two, but since my signs are different, I'm going to subtract and take the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So when I do that subtraction, I am going to get 7 minus 5 is 2, 6 minus 3 is 3, 5 minus 0 is 5. So I get 5 and 32 hundredths, and that remains positive. I'll rewrite it down here. That remains positive because I have greater absolute value in my positive number. All right, number two, so we have negative 6 and 82 hundredths minus 8 and 47 hundredths. So when we are doing this, once again, well, since this one is subtraction, we need to rewrite it as addition. So I have negative 6 and 82 hundredths. I'm going to do my add a line and change the sign, so I change subtraction to addition, and then I'm going to change my next number to a negative, so negative 8 and 47 hundredths. And so now I have an addition problem, so I'm going to line up my two numbers, and since my signs are the same, I am going to add and keep my sign. So 2 plus 7 is 9. 8 plus 4 is 12. I'm going to carry a 1. 8 plus 6 is 14, plus an additional 1 is 15. So my answer, once again, add and keep the sign. So my answer is going to be negative 15 and 29 hundredths. All right, number three. So we have addition. And so we're going to line up our decimals and just add and keep the sign. Now I'm going to put my greater value on top, just because when we do get to subtraction, we're going to want to make sure that when we're subtracting decimals, we want to make sure that we're lining them up and taking the subtraction of the greater minus the lesser. So I'm going to put negative 9 and 56 hundredths on top. And then negative 6 tenths is going to go on the bottom. Notice how I put in two placeholders here because I'm lining up my decimal. So once again, since it's addition, I'm just going to add 6 plus 0 is 6, 5 plus 6 is 11. I'm going to carry a 1. So I get 10 and 16 hundredths, but remember my answer is going to be negative because I'm adding and keeping the sign. So negative 10 and 16 hundredths is my answer. All right, so now let's take a look at number 4. So first thing we need to do is we need to rewrite this as an addition sentence. So I have negative 4 and 821 thousandths. I'm going to change subtraction to addition, and I'm going to change the number, my next number, to its opposite, so it would be positive 3 and 2 tenths. So I have an addition sentence, but I notice that my answers have different signs, so I'm going to take the difference of those two numbers and then take the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So I'm going to put my greater number on top, well, the number with the greater absolute value on top, and then I am going to put my other number on the bottom, and I'm adding in some placeholders just so that I can keep everything lined up, and then I'm going to subtract. So 1 minus 0 is 1, 2 minus 0 is 2, 8 minus 2 is 6, 4 minus 3 is 1. Now, I'm taking the sign of the number with the greater absolute value, so my answer is going to be negative. So negative 1 and 621 thousandths. That's my answer. Okay, so this one, we are going to, it's subtraction, so we're going to rewrite it as addition. So I'm going to take 3 and 1800ths, and I'm going to add negative 7 and 92 hundredths. So once again, my signs are different. So I'm going to take the difference of those two numbers. I'm going to put the number with the larger absolute value on top and my other number on the bottom and line up those decimal points. And then I'm going to subtract. So when I subtract, I'm going to need to borrow. So I need to borrow from my 9. So now I have 12 minus 8, which gives me 4. 8 minus 1, which gives me 7. Don't forget your decimal point. And then I have 7 minus 3, which gives me 4. Now I have more negatives than I have positives because this number has a greater absolute value. So my answer would be negative 4 and 74 hundredths. Alright, next one. Once again, subtraction, so I'm going to rewrite it as an addition sentence. So I have negative 8 and 25 hundredths plus positive 8 and 14 hundredths. Okay, so my signs are different, so I'm going to subtract the number with the greater absolute value by the number with the lesser absolute value. And when I do that, 5 minus 4 is 1, 2 minus 1 is 1, 8 minus 8 is 0. I have a greater absolute value in my negative number, so my answer will be negative. So I have negative 11 hundredths as my answer. Alright, so for this one, once again, it's subtraction, so I am going to rewrite it as an addition sentence. So I have negative 21 and 45 hundredths plus negative 6 and 781 thousandths. So since my signs are the same, I am just going to add and keep the sign. So I have negative 21 and 45 hundredths up top. Now notice that this one goes to the thousandths, so I am going to add a 0 as a placeholder. And then I'm going to add in 6 and 781 thousandths, and that one's negative also. So I add these together. 0 plus 1 is 1. 5 plus 8 is 13. 7 plus 4 is 11, plus 1 is 12. So I'm going to put a 2 there and carry. 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 plus 1 is 8. And then I have 2 plus 0, which is just 2. And once again, my answer is negative, so I'm putting that negative out front. So I have negative 28 and 231 thousandths. Okay, number 8. So this one is already written as addition, but I have different signs. So I'm going to take the difference of those two numbers and subtract, and then I'm going to take the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So let's set this up. So I have 3 and 3 thousandths, and then I have 2 and 56 hundredths, but I'm going to add a placeholder. I'm going to subtract these two values. So 3 minus 0 is 3. And then for the next one, we really need to borrow. So I'm going to borrow from my 3. So that becomes a 2. This becomes a 10, but I still need to borrow for my next number. So that's now a 9, and then we have a 10. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 5 is 4. And 2 minus 2 is 0. So I have 443 thousandths as my answer. My answer is positive. So there's my final answer. All right, last one. So this one we are adding once again, so we don't need to rewrite it as an addition sentence because it already is adding. So we're just going to add and keep the sign. So when I set this up, I have negative 23 and 6/10 or 60 hundredths. I added that 0 for a placeholder. And then I have negative 10 and 45 hundredths. I'm adding them together and I'm keeping that sign. So 0 plus 5 is 5. 6 plus 4 is 10. I'm carrying a 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. Don't forget that decimal point. And then 2 plus 1 is 3. So since I added both of these and they have the same sign, my answer will also be negative. So my final answer here is negative 34 and 5 hundredths. All right. If you have any questions, please make sure you note them in the Edpuzzle, and we will see you all tomorrow. Thanks.